a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready.
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys, for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
Welcome back to another edition of the Rouge Radio podcast, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. My name is Robert Dalton, and joining me, as always, Mr. Tony Allen. Before we get to the banter, let's hit up the sponsors and let's kick it to our new booth announcer.
Rouge Radio podcast is sponsored by the good friends over at manscaped.com. Go to Manscaped, enter the promo code Rouge, and you get 20% off your entire order as well as free worldwide shipping. Your balls, they will thank you. We're also partnered with the good people at Sports Interaction. Go to SIA.com/Rouge, and your first deposit is matched 100%.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't know if we have a name for you, and this is kind of looking pretty odd. If you're watching this on YouTube and you see my lips opening, I guess we could maybe, pretend like nobody's watching. For people in the audio, I guess that sounds kind of cool. Now they get to play with the full radio soundboard that we have. And before we get into this week's show, obviously, we are 2 hockey fans, and I feel usurped. My Winnipeg Jets just handed a ass-kicking to the Boston Bruins. But nobody cares about that because Tony's Calgary Flames just, I don't want to say it's a blockbuster, but what's going on in Calgary right now?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not a blockbuster, but the Flames did kind of hijack my night here. I am looking down, staring at my phone because the Flames are working on a trade. And the 2 Flames apparently going out is Jacob Pelche and Andrei Kuzmenko. Kuzmenko, the fact that if we ever got anything for him, that's amazing. Kuzmenko's been a huge letdown since acquiring him. Now, as a player, Jacob Pelche, young kid, 23, he's had all the chances in the world to succeed with the Calgary Flames and has never taken it, never moved up, never proven himself, never capitalized on that opportunity. But for some reason, in the past 20 years, I have never seen a Calgary Flame more overvalued by its fans than Jacob Pelche. I read these tweets what people are saying about Jacob Pelche, and it just makes me, is there a second Jake Pelche on the team that I'm unaware of? Because the Jacob Pelche I know is not what Flames fans are describing. This kid has had all the opportunities in the world. He's 23 years old. He has never even come close to making an impact. But the Flames fans seem to think that what comes back has to be Mitchkov and a first rounder because we're giving up Pelche, horribly overvaluing this young kid. So and because it's only the Flames players that I'm hearing and not Flyers players, I'm glued to my phone. I mean, whether or not you like Frank Saravelli, I kind of like the guy, but I know he puts his foot in his mouth several times. But Frank Saravelli is saying that Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost are coming back to Calgary in the trade.
Wow,
Farabee, I know more. I like to think I'm above average when it comes to hockey players, but I don't know who Morgan Frost is.
Well, you will.
That's the thing. And it's just does anybody have was he on a World Junior team? And I just need to, my memory jogged. It's if you remember the 2017 World Juniors, Morgan Frost, okay, that might jog a memory if I go, but no idea who Morgan Frost is right now. Although the Farabee would be very nice. I would take that for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned that, fans, and we'll talk about fan favorites, when we come into the CFL portion of the podcast, which is the entirety of our show. But, fans glued to certain players, whether or not they are valued, undervalued, or overvalued. And proof, I'll test your memory here. I mean, granted, you probably weren't a huge Winnipeg Jets 1.0 fan, and you probably weren't a fan of guys who were regularly called up. But there was a player, I want to say 1992, maybe 93. We'll test your memory here. Jan Kaminsky. Doesn't ring a bell? No.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
okay. Well, he was a fan favorite of mine. Nobody
Mhm.
else liked him, and I was like, he got called up to the big squad. I think he only played like 2 games this one time, 1 assist, and he got sent down and never heard from again. So, I mean, I don't know why certain players become fan favorites. Maybe it's how they talk and uh, you know the intensity that they bring onto the field or onto the ice. But for some reason, the value that fans have to certain players does not equate to actual production. And I think certain fans need to just to remember that. I don't know. That just might be a thing. And I say that because the Winnipeg Blue Bombers made some big news. In fact, they made the news the day after we recorded. And actually, they didn't actually make the news. It was Adam Bighill announcing that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers had advised him that they are not going to be renewing his contract. The writing was on the wall, in my opinion, on that one. The moment that they re-signed Tony Jones, who played really, really well, admirably, in Adam Bighill's departure during injury, and there was no significant drop off. And when I say that, there was no drop off from Adam Bighill 2024 to Tony Jones. This wasn't Adam Bighill 2021
No.
and then being replaced by Tony Jones. So we've always said it. Father Time is undefeated when it comes to players like this. But this raises a question here because Adam Bighill says he wasn't notified by Winnipeg. He had to actually pick up the phone to talk to Kyle Walters, the general manager of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Last year, there was all these instances where, I shouldn't say all, but there was a couple where teams or players were told before they re-signed with Winnipeg, they let it be known that, yeah, this was literally a last minute thing because conversation didn't start until like 5 minutes ago. Then there were players that were allowed to go to free agency because there was no communication whatsoever. Now we're starting to see a trend. Is this a big issue in Winnipeg, or is this a issue that every team goes through, but the Winnipeg Blue Bombers seem to be at the top of the list because of how successful that they've been over the course of the last 5 or 6 years? I don't know from an outsider's point of view, because we'll talk to you about the Calgary Stampeders, but from your point of view, is this an issue that Bomber fans should probably be well aware of?
Yeah, for me, this is a two-part answer. One, as far as Bighill not knowing, that's doing him dirty. He deserves that respect from that standpoint. And that's basically my thought on that. How it went, like him being released, I think there was a tweet, and the poor guy got crucified for it because I thought it, but I'm not a big enough jerk to respond to it. But I forget who sent it out, and it was just a yada yada. I guess it just proves there's no loyalty. Once they're done with you, they just get rid of you. It's like, yes, welcome to pro sports. That's literally how it's worked for the last 150 years. Once you get too old, once you start to fade out, you're gone. And unless you've only started watching the CFL on Monday, like this past Monday, this is how you survive. You get rid of veterans to get younger and cheaper. So it's like, this is the most average, generic move in football for Winnipeg to just say, yeah, we need to move on from you, Adam Bighill. Like, there's not even smoke around this, much less a fire. Like, this is the most average transaction, but it was Adam Bighill.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the only reason why why there was any attention to it. And I think, if memory serves me, and there might be someone can elaborate on, but it's been happening since the beginning of time. And it's like, I don't bash the CFL often, but I have my beefs. And one is how we depart with our superstars, our legends. Like, I believe Anthony Pitts was the same way. Just 1 year, we released him. He was done. We're not going to sign you again. And it was Alan Pitts, So it happens. So Winnipeg didn't do anything dirty. Winnipeg didn't do anything that isn't needed to survive in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But if they didn't at least give him the courtesy, that's pretty gross.
I
Outside
think
that, and
I think
someone's going to take him. Calgary's probably desperate enough to take him. They want some big names. They just want to let's sell some jerseys this year. I don't think Calgary's going to make a run for the Western Division. Maybe they will. I shouldn't say anything. Like, please do, Calgary. Please do it to spite me if you want to. But Adam Bighill can sell some jerseys then. Bring him in. We could use someone like him just to inspire the locker room. But he barely played for Winnipeg last year, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was the Labor Day when he had that season-ending injury, and
not the. It was not what I was seeing on there. Like, Adam Bighill, unfortunately, welcome to getting old.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the only apology you get. Like you said, Father Time's undefeated. The only thing we need to say for apology you get, Adam Bighill, is like, we're sorry you aged like the rest of us.
The guy could still kick my ass.
Oh, that's true.
Like, it'll be 20 years before I can maybe even come close. But no, that's just that's a fan favorite. When the Bombers ended the drought, Adam Bighill came to my work, had a picture taken with so he'll always be like one of the focal points of the Bombers in the last 5 or 6 years. Wally Buono made a huge reputation of getting rid of guys a year too early, possibly. Baron Simpson comes to mind. He allowed Baron Simpson to go to free agency. And Baron Simpson translated that into another 5 years. 2 of them probably shouldn't have been played, but I granted. There's other guys that can, come to. And then you get to teams that become too loyal.
Mm-hmm.
The Montreal Alouettes held on to Anthony Calvillo. Now, granted, they tried to have that succession plan. They had Adrian McPherson. There's a lot of names that come to mind, but I can't think of them. But they at least tried to think about life past Anthony Calvillo, but they held on to Anthony Calvillo till the day he retired. Like that 2010 year should have been his second last, at least the last year. But that 2011,
that's why Anthony Calvillo syndrome was born.
Yeah,
slowly becoming Zach Collaro syndrome.
Yeah, but and we'll talk more about that when we go into our 9 teams in 9 weeks. But I think it's better to partake in this getting rid of these older veterans sooner rather than later, or else you run into a situation where you're the Montreal Alouettes, and then the Montreal Alouettes post Anthony Calvillo was like a chicken running around with his head cut off looking for a quarterback. You think that Rakeem Cato comes to mind. What's him? Jonathan Crompton, Alex Brink, Kevin Glenn. They traded for Kevin Glenn, then they ended up trading him away. Drew Willie, Darian Durant, finally, before they settled on Vernon Adams, and then they did him dirty. But so, it took a while for the Montreal Alouettes to get over that Anthony Calvillo syndrome. So another case for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is they released Drew Wolitarsky, who still had another a year on that contract, but that bonus that was scheduled to be paid out wasn't that much. His contract wasn't that much. Leads me to believe that Winnipeg is really, really going to push hard. So that 2026, when they do move on from guys like Stanley Bryant, move on from guys like Zach Claros, that hard landing isn't as hard when they go into the 2026 year, because I imagine they're going to go way all in the free agency, and these kind of moves are kind of going to ease the fall, so to speak. The Calgary Stampeders made some big news as well. What was his name? Mike Rose and Joey Botters released prior to their bonus. Some big new, some sentiments on the Calgary Stampeders. You got the ear to the ground. You're a huge Stampeders fan, who's I guess going through the wind of social media in Calgary. Your thoughts on that move as well? Is this Dave Dickinson kind of second guessing some contracts, or are they cheaping out again on bonus payments?
Yeah, I think this is one of the ones, like we started the show. Age wasn't the problem, but money is. Unless it goes hand in hand with what I think both of us have been saying for a while now. Calgary needs to be buyers at free agency now, and if this is a money move to spend it somewhere else, then that's what's going to happen. Like, they're big losses, and I think the one place Calgary does not have room to lose anywhere is defense, period. So unless you're planning massive upgrades, whatever you've let go on defense or offense, I mean, they obviously need to build an offensive line to protect Vernon Adams if that's where their money is going. But we'll see how this shapes out only because I don't know where my expectations for the Stampeders are right now. Like, you're going to lose. You lost some good players. You're going to save some money. Well, what are the Stampeders' expectations for next year? Obviously, maybe the Grey Cup because you brought in Vernon Adams. But do you think do you have the purchases coming in? Do you already have scouts with eyes on players that are cheaper replacements? Because again, if you can go younger and cheaper, maybe not both, maybe one or the other. Maybe they have it. We'll see. But yeah, the Stampeders definitely continue to just baffle people with their decisions this offseason. I think the only one anyone's ever truly liked was Vernon Adams Jr.
And here, if they're intending to be buyers, who are they going to replace Mike Rose and Botters? I mean, okay, I get Botters. Botters, when he came back from the NFL, didn't put up the production that they were hoping. Mike Rose, maybe not the production, but when healthy, one of the dominant defensive line in the CFL last year.
Yeah.
You know, I know Derek Taylor, who's into the numbers, friend of the program, would indicate that Mike Rose should be under contract soon, because there are going to be some people who, some general managers who would be on his front step. But if you're going to be buyers, why don't you add to an existing roster that has those two players? Otherwise, this to me, it screams of the same old from that you've done for like the last few years, which really has come down to what we see before us. And if that's the case, I don't know how Dave Dickinson lasts the season. I really don't. I know we always say that we want all 9 teams to be healthy and raking in the money. And then there's a part of me that says that Calgary needs to suck for another 4 or 5 years. Yeah. But I also want to see some smart moves on this case. So in this case, it baffles me. I will wait to see what they do in free agency. Before we get into our predictions, let's go into the Global Rouge. Let's get the drum solo here to tell us who are the top countries and cities that listen to the Rouge Radio podcast. And I will let's get our new booth announcer, shall we?
We've got your Canada, the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Switzerland, Australia, Brazil, Cuba, and Belize. Top cities: Winnipeg, Frankfurt, St. Albert, Lethbridge, Burnaby, Regina, Eastman, Edmonton, Medicine Hat, thanks for the hit, Tony, and
problem.
Calgary. But it's not going to be Calgary. I imagine that listener is Jacob Pelche, and he's no longer in Calgary.
Sorry, I didn't want to make fun of all the Calgary Flames fans. I mean, our booth announcer didn't want to make fun of the Calgary Flames fans. Free agency is upon us. The legal tampering window starts Sunday at around 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, I believe. And we wanted to do the show this week just because of the fact that, all the news when it gets leaked online is, I think I hear the drum solo still in my, I got to get rid of that. That's annoying to me. So because of the legal tampering window, the, all the social media leaks, it pretty much, to me, it takes away from it's like Christmas free agent frenzy on, I believe it's February 11th. But we already, we'll know where everybody is signing by then. At least the majority of them. So I decided, hey, let's do a show this week, and let's make some wacky predictions. We didn't come up with an itinerary here, but here let's do magic number 3. I'll start just so you can get things soiled up here, because I know that you are still on your phone looking to see who's coming back in the Jacob Pelche trade.
Yes. Sorry.
I have a prediction, and it's not a bold prediction, but I've got Jake Ceresna, formerly of the Toronto Argonauts, going to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And this isn't a homer part of me. This is Winnipeg really needing some help up the middle. Last year, specifically in the Grey Cup, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were not able to get to Nick Arbuckle, and they made a penchant of not being able to get to the quarterback. Now, a lot of that is they ran a specific scheme that didn't require that, which is why you saw guys like Tyrell Ford getting a high amount of interceptions, Dietrich Nichols getting a high amount of interceptions, and a lot of their defensive backs getting high in tackles. And they were quite successful at it during the regular season. They were amongst the league leaders in yards against in regards to the passing game. They just couldn't really stop the run when they were called upon. And I think a large portion of that is because they ran a 3-9 system. So 3 defensive linemen and 9 linebackers / defensive backs. Jake Ceresna will provide you with a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. Last year, he had 8 quarterback sacks, forced fumbles, and in 17 games played, and he added 29 tackles for the Toronto Argonauts en route to a Grey Cup win. Sorely needed. Even if you change your scheme, I think that beside either Celestin Haba, if you re-sign him, or Taekwon Garbett, or Willie Jefferson, I think that is a move that Winnipeg really needs to make. And it looks, from all accounts that I've seen, it looks like that, not a done deal, but it looks like the way that it's going to go. Any prediction on your end?
No predictions.
You don't want to make any predictions?
I don't know. It's tough. I'm not good at this part of the game like you are. I will concede when it comes to this side, I don't hold a candle to you, and I would just end up making myself look dumber than I already look.
So
okay, I don't mind taking the stab at free agents landing certain places, trades, movements, things like that. I'm a big dummy.
All right, so let's have a prediction of some free agent landing spots. Do you?
All right, throw some names out for me. I'll do this. I won't blind rank it, but let's blind sort them out.
Eugene Lewis, pending free agent. It looks like that the bridge is not necessarily burned between him and Edmonton, but Ed Hervey has gone on record saying that he's not going to get what he wants.
I think I heard that too. I think Dave Campbell, former semi-regular guest on the show put that out too, that Edmonton's not closing the door on the deal, but he's definitely gotten paid, and I think he probably wants to get paid. I think just for the talents of what he is, and I think we covered this last time, but it screams Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't land in Toronto, I feel like he lands in BC.
I feel that he lands in Hamilton.
Really, eh?
Honestly, yeah. I think that that seems like a Hamilton free agent. Like you pay.
It feels like they don't do that anymore, though. Like maybe they're still that team. Yeah, I don't know. I interrupted your prediction. Keep going.
I feel like that is like I know I probably said Toronto last week, but the more I think about it, I think it's more of a Hamilton team. Tyrell Ford, the twin brother of Trey Ford, is a pending free agent. Canadian starter.
Yeah.
Obviously had a very, very, very good year. Was Winnipeg's nominee for most outstanding. Actually, I don't even think he was the nominee because Brady Oliveira ended up winning it. But he was a nominee for most outstanding defensive player. In this case, your prediction on Tyrell Ford.
Saskatchewan.
You think he goes to
I
Saskatchewan?
like Saskatchewan. I do.
I don't know if they have. I don't know if they have a room for it. It looks like that they are not closing the door on Marcus Sales. If they can find room for Tyrell Ford to replace Marcus Sales,
I think you find room for him, but we'll see.
Yeah,
maybe that'd be one of my edgier hot take landing spots, but we'll see. I feel like Saskatchewan's going to do something wild just to throw us all off guard and sort it out later. Do it now, sort it out later.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to. I know that I had mentioned on this podcast, or maybe even during group chats, Jalen Acklin. I'm not going to ask you for your prediction because it looks like he's leaning towards retirement, and that's unfortunate. This is a guy who came out into the CFL like gangbusters with the Hamilton Tiger Cats and came to automatic success in the first couple of years, going to back-to-back Grey Cup, signing as a free agent to Ottawa, and missing the playoffs since he arrived. And then obviously last year Ottawa went in and one and done against the Toronto Argonauts. You almost feel like he should have at least one more year left, just a swan song. It sucks when you have a good player like that. When you retire, you want to go out on your own terms, but you also want to know that it's your last game. And to that to me, I just that irks me if he's going to call it a career. There's some. Let's go to some big names. I would say Alex Hollins, but Alex Hollins was actually released by the BC Lions. I don't know if I'm going to. Let's put it out to you. Where do you see Alex Hollins as a free agent destination?
What position is he?
He's a receiver.
Where does he play receiver?
Yeah, he was with the BC Lions. He didn't play that much last year.
Because his names didn't jump out to me. I don't know if I've just been under a rock when it comes to him in the BC Lions. Calgary Stampeders.
Yeah, that does seem to be. He has some history with Vernon Adams, so that doesn't exactly scream impossible for that. So I think that is probably a good bet. And you want to stick with your Adam Bighill to Calgary
prediction? I think so too. I would not be surprised. I mean, it's not the sexiest outcome. It's not controversial. It kind of feels like McManus to the Calgary Stampeders at the end of his career, and just like nothing there. But I don't know. I for some reason I like that fit. Like I said, I don't know. I like that idea.
And he'll replace another number 4 Cam Judge, who was traded to the Toronto Argonauts. So that move kind of makes sense. It actually does. And the last one, I'll throw it out to you. Janarian Grant.
Okay. Janarian Grant.
3-time Grey Cup champion, Janarian Grant. 1 with the Toronto Argonauts, 2 with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. There's a part of me that sees him returning back to Winnipeg. But
yeah.
I don't know if there's any bridges that have been burned on this one, and I don't know if Winnipeg. There's a part of me that seems to be that they have Dylan Mitchell slotted in for that return spot, but I've been wrong before. The move makes sense to right or wrong, but I can also see him going to Saskatchewan. They are missing a returner because I don't imagine that they're going to bring back Mario Alford.
Yeah, no, I like the Winnipeg too. I think Winnipeg will be looking to bring in something familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one. I like that one too.
All right, so
I think you sold me on that one. That may not have been my initial pick, but I think you sold me on it.
All right, and that's what we do on this podcast: is we sell people on wild, bold predictions. Yeah. Any news on the trade?
Yeah, it looks like it's they say there's still some moving pieces. There might be some picks involved, but player-wise, it looks like it's Jacob Pelche and Andrei Kuzmenko from the Flames going to Philadelphia for Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. So that gives us a left winger, which we really don't need, but I like the center. So, and at the end of the day, the players going out don't make me upset. No, I'm more excited for what's coming back than I'm sad about what's leaving. I don't think there was anything in Calgary for those two players leaving, and the talent is higher coming back. So I'm very happy with this trade. It's not a blockbuster, but it feels like these two players coming in make Calgary deeper if they're going to try and take that wild card spot and go on a heater. Because honestly, let's be honest, if you get in the playoffs, and this is what we see from Dustin Wolf, you can't be that confident. You're probably going to beat us, but you can't be that confident knowing. But and I'm not doing this. This is just unfortunate because you're a Jets fan. But
if the playoffs started today, it's the Jets against the Flames. If the playoffs started today, I believe it. I looked at it.
Well, I'm just saying,
those 2 weeks in this podcast is not. It would not. Someone's.
I'm just more worried about. I think Dustin Wolf is amazing, having a great regular season. But the reason why I was referencing you, Winnipeg has a goaltender that has the greatest regular seasons ever, and then it can't do it again once the playoffs start. And is Dustin Wolf that guy, or is Dustin Wolf going to stay hot in the playoffs?
It remains to be seen. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Rouge Radio podcast. You can reach us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rouge Radio. Like and subscribe to us on any of your podcast applications. You can actually view us on YouTube. Leave us a review, please. Please and thank you. You can follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky. Myself at Rouge Dalts, Tony at Tony Rouge, and of course the podcast at Rouge Radio. Send us some emails at thenewrouge@gmail.com. I will be doing a spot with the Canadian Football Podcast during the CFL Free Agent Frenzy on the 11th. Make sure to tune into there. For Tony, I'm Dalts. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.